All right, good evening, good evening. Tapping in. Y'all know I like to jump right in. Y'all, so this topic is really because we keep misassigning things. We're mislabeling things while we're trying to make sure there's some support we're providing our young people, while we're making sure we're trying to understand their emotions, their motivation, right? Like what's causing them to respond certain ways. And a lot of times we are labeling it incorrectly. Hey, hey, good evening. So we're gonna jump right in. So a couple of things, y'all. We keep adding reminders, we keep adding tools. We might find different intervention and tutoring protocols, right? We keep adding concern, right? We're moved by concern. We might be downloading more apps, taking more profiles and assessments. We have all the platforms, all the calendars, all these things, but it's really not impacting the outcomes, right? The outcomes are not shifting in a proportional way for all the different productivity tools and remind all these things. It's really not impacting our outcomes how it should. Why? Y'all, the reason is because support without systems is just going to create exhaustion. If we don't have a solid system in place, we're just doing things. And we've talked about this before. So what happens is a lot of times people get labeled as maybe lazy, careless, inconsistent, distracted, checked out, unmotivated, all these things, y'all. But the reality for real, is that the structure around them is often unclear. It might be unclear, unstable. So that's why the people are exhausted, right? And that's why the outcomes are not outcoming how we want them to because it's unsustainable. It might work for a little bit, but it's not sustainable. So we're living in a time where people are being emotionally diagnosed for structural problems, right? We're kind of seeing the aftermath. Oh, maybe they're careless, they're lazy. People are being emotionally diagnosed. We have a great description for it, but it's really structural problems, systemic issues that are getting them there. So students might get called lazy, right? If expectations are inconsistent, or if they don't know what to do, they're gonna what? Do nothing. So parents might get called uninvolved, but if they're overwhelmed and feeling unsupported, then why am I going to come to all the things? Right? We're just doing stuff. So teachers get called burned out, but they're carrying systems that were never designed for sustainability, right? They were, okay, these are things to do, adjustments to make to get to this short-term goal, but now we're trying to carry it through as a whole full strategic plan for the next 5, 10, 15 years, but we're calling it that the teachers are burning out, right? And then even on the organizational side, organizations, and I'm smiling a bit because organizations try to motivate people through environments, right? When you might pop up at work and it's a surprise taco bar, or oh, it's ice cream day, stuff like that. They try to keep people motivated and excited because of the environment, even though it'll be a temporary environment, and the real environment is actively draining them. Y'all let me know. Talk to me in the chat. Is any of this sounding familiar? If you're like, ooh, Anika, what? This is what we're talking about tonight? Yes, this is what we're talking about. Y'all let me know if any of this is resonating. Okay. If you've been in some of these environments. I'm gonna say a little more though. When we're talking about students needing clear structure, otherwise they're gonna shut down and do nothing. A student may look unmotivated if they don't really understand how their grades are being calculated. Yeah, so sometimes, yes, some of the students I work with, it never fails. At some point along the way, especially when they get to the middle grades, we stop once they learn about percentages, right? We stop and we actually do the calculations for them to understand how their grades work, because otherwise it's just a number to them. Even had that conversation last year when my son was in third grade. It was just numbers until we gave it some context, right? So even the understanding how grades are calculated, what are they for, all of that, if that is not clear, students can look unmotivated. So if our assignments are living in 4 different platforms, if we have to go to Google Classroom, then we have to log into this other dashboard, then we have to log into. So that's a lot. That's a lot. People don't like that as adults. So think about that for our young students navigating. And this is all just for one content area, right? Let alone when we talk about secondary life, I have 7 different classes. I might log into 12 different platforms that day. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. What if the deadlines are constantly shifting? What if feedback is inconsistent? Okay, sometimes Mrs. Jones will give it to me, give this feedback at the beginning of the unit. Maybe another time, Miss Porter's giving the feedback at the end of the unit. And then another time, Miss Bashir is giving this feedback, and we're waiting till the district benchmark. So the feedback is coming at all different times. It's not consistent, it's not standard. Then intervention only happening after failure. Y'all, we know, and we're going to continue to say, there are so many signs, so many trails and traces and crumbs that we'll know before the assessment, right? The official assessment, whether or how well a student may do and what adjustments they might need to make. So we can make them ahead of time instead of waiting until after the fact, right? And just the whole cycle of emotions and behaviors that go with that it could be avoided because we see enough to catch it. But do we actually act on what we see? So that's some what we're talking about. Slash, a student may look unmotivated if every teacher's expectations feel completely different. When we say feel different, think about, and I'm talking about us, secondary again, although it does happen in elementary because they have their main teacher, and then they may have their specials teachers as well, right? But think about, especially for secondary, if any given day, I'm seeing 7 different teachers. Maybe even if it's 8A day, I'm seeing 4 to 5 teachers every day. And so the expectations for what we do, what we need to have out, what we need to have ready, how we start class, how we log in for us. So like if all these things are different every class period, it's going to be frustrating. The students might be perceived as unmotivated. But again, if you're confused, if you have questions, that will shut you down. Confused people will look unmotivated. Parent side, right? Parents may appear inconsistent if the communication is only happening reactively. Okay, once a child maybe didn't do well on an exam, maybe once a child has had a behavior, something happened. Now I'm communicating, right? If it always seems reactive, then I'm probably not going to engage as much. I'm not going to be as consistent as you want me to be because it seems like maybe you aren't being as consistent, right? It's just reactive. We'll talk as needed. What if, from the parent perspective, every teacher is communicating differently, right? Again, Mrs. Jones is communicating once a week. Ms. Porter is communicating daily. Ms. Bashir is communicating biweekly via email, right? And then some people are using the Remind app, and some people are using Class Dojo. So again, we're just processing and reflecting some from these different perspectives. Different things that we assign, right, blame to motivation for, but it's structural and system things happening. The reality of parents maybe appearing inconsistent or disconnected, perhaps, but the reality of them balancing maybe multiple children and jobs and caretaking and all the emotional labor that comes with that. So a lot of times from parent perspective, school support can feel very fragmented. And so I talk to school leaders about this quite a lot. And I'm like, y'all, stop faking out the families. When I say stop faking out the families, a lot of times schools are good for, oh, parents, families, y'all come to reading night. Parents, families, y'all come to math night, to STEM night. And in reality, yeah, that's just an extension of what happens at school. Is there anything in particular being said in reading night, in math night, in STEM night, literacy night that is going to support like home routines, home flow, home structure? No, it's just an extension of the school day where these are some of the strategies you can use and go over with your student. But we can't even get to the strategies because we're having a hard time with our home systems, right? But you want to talk to me about this new math strategy that the young people are having a hard time with. So y'all see the disconnect because again, if they don't feel seen, right, what they're navigating, because we want them to have this extension of again the school day. So the reading night, STEM night, literacy night, math night, then yes, it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem. They may appear inconsistent. So sometimes parents can appear inconsistent if they're receiving reminders, but not actionable systems. So we're telling them, okay, we need you to do this, we need you to do blank, but it's not like a clear workflow, we might call it, or it's not a clear action item, right? There's no how to do, but we need you to do. Okay, but how? Where do I go? If it's a heavy lift for me to figure out the how as a parent, I'm not going to do it, or it's going to be inconsistent. So we're talking about and we're assigning different perspectives, different takeaways, right, on our different groups. We need to make sure we're understanding clearly what they're navigating. So that's what we're talking about because it's usually not a motivation issue. So same thing for the parents. Like we say, parents, people cannot sustain what they can't clearly navigate. If you're telling me what the end goal is, but again, I may not work in education. This is not my day to day. I don't know how to do it, how to get there. It's going to be done haphazardly. It's going to be inconsistent because I'm going to do when I have time to lift and to research and all of that. It's not going to be consistent. On the teacher side, educators may look disengaged, but if initiatives are constantly changing, and y'all have heard enough educators talk about this at this point, right? If the initiatives are constantly changing, maybe we have something new every 6 weeks, every quarter. So you really don't have a chance to get your legs underneath you and like, okay, this is working, or maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Oh, but it's time to change again. Okay. So with that, expectations keep shifting. What is it that we're looking for? We're focusing on behavior. Okay, no, now we're focusing on this particular strategy, this particular instructional strategy. So that sometimes, and I'm going to use the word systems, sometimes systems create unnecessary friction, but I'm really going to say the culture, like just the norm. Sometimes it creates unnecessary friction, again, because things aren't clear. So again, if it's that heavy lift of, you told me to do this, but I don't have a clear path to get there, I might freestyle my way there if I do it. So being careful about how we perceive whether or not teachers are disengaged or if it's some of these things, and more than likely happening in the background. Because the reality is, teachers are managing behavior, they're providing emotional support, they're grading, they're communicating, and there's performance pressure simultaneously, right? Because they are checking data to see how students are doing in Mrs. Bergeron's class, and Mrs. Seals' class, and Mrs. Jones' class, right? So, y'all, sometimes burnout is not a character issue, it's a systems issue. So we're talking about all of this. Why are we talking about it now, y'all? Because we're on the edge of summertime. Everybody's counting down. We are happy. We are excited. But I want to keep it a buck. I want to be real. Y'all, summertime is going to reveal what was already fragile. It is. Because sometimes people are like, oh, summertime feels chaotic. Oh my gosh, right? But summertime doesn't create the chaos. It's gonna put a magnifying glass on what was already iffy, if we're honest. A lot of times, families don't realize how much of the structure the school year is providing. And it's quiet, right? Because it's just natural, because it's part of the school year. We're going to talk about exactly what, but you don't miss it until it's gone. Then you just feel like, oh, summer's always crazy. But summertime will expose whether or not your family has weak routines. Summertime will expose if communication is inconsistent in the house. It will exposed if there's an overdependence on the school structure. If it's not school time, right? If we're fully in school, we're not on any kind of break, then everything is smooth. And as soon as we're on break, it's hectic. That's an overdependence. So summer will expose if there's emotional exhaustion and if there's a lack of sustainable rhythms. Maybe we did a couple of adjustments and it's working for a bit, but can we keep this up for months at a time? Right? So, some of the specific examples, y'all, the school year provides this. You know what time you need to wake up, right? Wake up times are real during the school year. Transitions. So, okay, we need to make sure we've eaten breakfast. If we're going to eat at home by blank time, this is about the time you get dressed so we can be at the bus stop or be at the car, right? Ready to be dropped. So, all these things. So, social interaction exists with peers, with adults, right? Just that good practice, that consistent practice. Accountability exists, whether it is daily for assignments slash bigger assessments overall and projects. Routines exist because, again, when you go to class, you know exactly how it should flow, right? In each class, you know where to put this. If you missed yesterday, you know where to go get your paper, all these things. Movement exists, literally, because it has to in PE, but also at this point, a lot of educators are super intentional about making sure that young people and themselves, right, are able to move around as part of their processing when they're learning. And during the school year, deadlines exist. If you have this project, if you have this quiz coming up, if you have, a homework assignment, all of these things are during the school year embedded, no problem. Then summertime hits. Oh my goodness. When summertime hits, sleep schedules drift. Screen time becomes exponential. My goodness. Reading routines disappear. Emotional emotional regulation weakens because, again, that reality of the consistent social interactions and exchange, all of that goes away. Motivation drops. Family tensions may rise. Yeah, so all of these things can actually cause summertime to not feel as fun if we're not careful, right? So, as we're talking about summertime, thinking about our students, thinking about families, y'all, students aren't losing skills first, they lose their rhythm first, right? They get out of habit, out of practice. Okay, on the school side, because schools feel this too. By the time we start really looking forward to and are coming back from spring break, the weak parts of the system become extremely visible in the school, at the schoolhouse. Students are exhausted, teachers are exhausted, and parents are absolutely tired, exhausted as well. So suddenly, engagement drops. It's a little harder for you to get responses for volunteers, right? Do you want to volunteer? People act like they don't hear you the same after that part. Missing work rises because students are just like, it's okay, I'm done, it's whatever. When it's summer, please. Communication weakens. It may not be on the same frequency as it was, and consistency in that frequency, right? If it was weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it was, it gets a little iffy. And then with all of that, right, this little gumbo, this little mixture mixed up, y'all, then the emotional tolerance shrinks as well. So for emotional tolerance, you have to think if everybody's tired, y'all, we know how that goes, but literally everybody's tired. So maybe discipline referrals are going up because the teacher that maybe had all the grace in August, in April, they're like, look, I've been telling you this since August. Same kind of thing. Same kind of thing with parents. Parents are like, listen, we should be seeing, okay, we're rounding out sixth grade. I should be seeing more of almost seventh grade behavior than beginning of sixth grade behavior. We say those kind of things. Then same thing for teachers. So everybody's exhausted. The students are tired. So emotional tolerance, emotional bandwidth, and grace absolutely declines. Absolutely. But again, fatigue exposes what systems were never sustainable. Even if we were able to kind of roll with it some, it's not something that can be long term. And specifically, being honest, math classrooms often expose this first on the school side because math quickly reveals the confidence gaps, right? So whether or not the missing assignments increase, the inconsistency, if there's some weak foundational learning that need to be filled in, the avoidance patterns, right? Whether it's having to go to the bathroom suddenly a million times, my stomach hurts, I feel sick, playing different games to try to not go to school. So all of those kind of things, they show up a little faster, unfortunately, in math class. And then also in terms of learning, the dependence on memorizing versus, oh, I really understand and can explain my understanding to you. So by that spring, right, we just came back or we're about to go on spring break, students who were surviving on temporary support, they're starting to emotionally check out. They're counted down, they're gone. They're emotionally checked out. So the end of the year blues are often system fatigue. So the things that everyone is like, oh, we just got to get through, right? People call it Maycember because it's just absolute system fatigue. Either the system was working or not. It is going to be more spicy, so you're still going to feel it, but the extent to which you feel it depends on the system and your systems. And this is also why AI is part of the conversation and why that conversation matters so much right now because it's not just changing productivity, it's exposing broken systems faster. So every time we talk about AI, whether we're talking about learning being revealed, assumptions being revealed, all these things, it's going to expose things faster. We're going to see it, but it's going to come a bit faster because yes, AI is accelerating output, but students can generate responses faster, teachers can create their materials faster, organizations can produce faster, but faster does not equal deeper systems, more developed systems, sustainable systems. It literally just means faster. That's it. That's it. So AI is also amplifying inconsistency because a student with a strong thinking system is going to use AI differently than a student that doesn't have a thinking system, a thinking process, because they're going to try to avoid thinking entirely and let AI do the thinking. So that's the difference. When there's a system, a process in place, right, that we can rinse and repeat is sustainable, or are we trying to plug in tech, plug in AI to fill really the gap, the need in the system where the system needs to be beefed up. So AI is exposing in classrooms shallow questioning, lack of critical thinking, unclear learning goals, and over reliance on tasks that are just for compliance. Like you're sitting there, you're working on the worksheet. Okay, cool. That doesn't mean we have any idea if the students are actually understanding, right? Or just guessing. In organizations, AI is revealing weak communication systems, if there's unclear implementation plans. And so let me pause and say this. So I'm not saying that I'm advocating for micromanaging, but should we have some standard operating procedure? Should we have some protocol for how to get there? Yes, right? But if it's just get there, then they're gonna get there. They're gonna get there. Slash AI is also exposing performative innovation, right? If you're just doing something to say you're doing it, then yeah, AI is exposing that. If it's not being used with intention, right? With true strategy overall. For families, AI is showing and revealing an over reliance on external tools, lack of routines, and inconsistent accountability. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. All of that is showing up at the house. So, yes, AI is multifaceted and really, really useful, but it was not designed to repair broken relationships, not designed to to replace or repair broken communication, nor emotional disconnection, or again, unsustainable systems. So, tools, AI is a tool. Tools can support systems, but they cannot become the system. And that is what a lot of people are getting very mixed up, honestly. You're using that tool to be your end all be all, but it can't. It's not sustainable. Tools cannot compensate for broken systems indefinitely. It might be able to do it for a little bit, fill in a couple gaps, right? And y'all know, almost like the cartoons, when someone plugs the hole, then another one pops up, and you're going to run out of things to plug the holes with until you actually what? Repair the boat, design a new boat, however you want to approach it, however you want to look at it. So, what does actually work? Well, we're talking about summertime, y'all, because we want to feel summertime. It should be more relaxed, but summertime is not about action, it's not about hyper control, and it's not about constant pressure. Slash, that also means it's not about endless reminders. Did you do? Don't forget that it's not about that. It's not about endless support. Because if we're leaning into the perfection, hyper control, constant pressure, that means we're setting ourselves up as the adults to have to give endless support because we're not making the adjustments to equip our young people to do this for themselves, right? To be actually feeding into the system, to be an active part of the system, feeding into it. Because the systems are repeatable rhythms, the expectations are clear. There's reflection loops, and y'all know I'm going to always talk about reflection because reflection is happening before we implement, during, and then after. And it's on loop, it's on replay. And then that is how we have our sustainable routines, if we're making sure we're mixing in those aspects. So, repeatable rhythms will be things like when the rhythms are predictable. So, maybe an example is the family weekly check in, consistent homework routines, predictable communication systems. Oh, I know every Wednesday we have blank, 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 right? Every Thursday we do. So a recurring reflection time. So I know I'm going to have time and space to reflect on how this is going, and I'll have time and space to make some adjustments. Repeatable rhythms, right? When it's predictable. When we talk about transitions should have structure. And I'll be talking a lot about that in these upcoming weeks. Sustainable meeting rhythms. This is the flow of our meeting, right? It's not okay. So what we need to talk about this time? How are we gonna? We're gonna go ahead and get started. It's a meeting rhythm. And then also clear intervention processes. So the intervention processes really probably taking place with the reflection time, because that's when we'll decide, okay, so this is what's going well. This is maybe where we need to make some adjustments. For clear expectations, again, y'all, clarity is going to reduce emotional exhaustion every time. People are drained, emotionally exhausted if things are unclear, if that because that becomes a lot of questions, which becomes a lot of lifts, right? So people struggle less when they know what matters, what you're looking for real. So what success looks like, where to find support. If I do need some help, where do I go? And then how to recover after mistakes. That last piece, especially, is super important because that is designed with the expectation of, again, remember we said not perfection. So, we're striving for our best, but okay, if we make a mistake, now what? How do I recover? How do I bounce back? With these reflection loops, strong systems create reflections before crisis. And I'm going to pause for a minute because a lot of, we talk about just kind of life flows, and then a lot of things connected to education is very reactive. But strong systems create reflection. There's time for reflection before crisis, right? Before implementation, during implementation, and after. So just because things are going well still doesn't mean, okay, we're not going to stop and reflect, refine, and talk about it. So we don't wait, oh my gosh, everything is falling apart, but we spend time on, okay, so what is working, what's not, and then what needs to be adjusted. We don't have to wait till, right, the rug is pulled from under and everything is hectic. Someone said that's a great point and something that needs to be discussed and understood. Ooh, which point? Which point? So, for sustainable routines, a sustainable system is not one that works for 3 days. Like I said, it's like the plugging in the holes on the cartoon, right? You'll get a little bit further. You might buy yourself a splash more time, but a sustainable system is one that can realistically work. Listen, listen, listen. It works when you're tired. It works if you're busy, it works if you're emotional or when you're overwhelmed. And the main thing, remember we said, emotional exhaustion happens when things are unclear. So if you've thought out how the routine needs to work, you've planned for it, then it's going to work regardless of the emotional state, right? So strong systems reduce the number of decisions people must survive every day. Think about it that way. Think about it that way. That if your system is tight, it's reducing the number of decisions that you have to survive every day. Because we know that a lot, yeah, there's a number, and I'm gonna have to look it up for one of our next chats. But the number of decisions the average person makes every day is crazy, especially then if you're connected to education, it increases that much more. So imagine taking away a lot of that decision making, just the types of interactions and system and engagement, the consistency, all the things that we're looking for, right? How that would actually come to life differently if we're making sure we're reducing the number of decisions that people have to survive every day. Let's see. So many of the objections arise because the point of a scholar having a thinking system or not is not truly illuminated enough on either the teacher or parent side of systems. So my challenge, my consideration, I want you to do, y'all, before summer is fully here, before summer arrives, before it's August and people are panicking, before another round of frustration, I want you to ask yourself, what are we trying to solve emotionally that actually requires structures? Because sometimes, again, we talked about support being reactive. It's an emotional thing. I want to show and demonstrate my care and concern by doing this, this, this. But what are we trying to solve emotionally that actually requires some structure? So we're trying to solve disconnection with reminding people, don't forget to log in, don't forget to show up to the family picnic, right? Are we trying to solve inconsistency with pressure? Oh, you know that we're all waiting for you. We want you to. Are we trying to solve overwhelm with motivational speeches? Are we trying to solve low confidence with just reassurance? Yeah, you got it. Yep, all you. Are we trying to solve burnout with temporary breaks? Right, the way that the teachers and parents, and it's almost opposite though, the way that teachers count down for breaks, and then the way that sometimes parents and family members count down for the break to be over, right? Because there's burnout happening in between on opposite sides. Are we trying to solve communication issues with more talking but still no systems? Are we trying to solve student avoidance with punishment instead of clarity? So you stay after school, you have lunchtime detention, now you get this done, right? That kind of a thing. That. So overall, y'all, if your school, organization, or community is trying to move beyond surface level support, right, and build systems that actually sustain growth and connection, y'all, I love to hear from you. So I want you to think for a moment and tell me, where do you see motivation being blamed for what structure could solve? Sit with that one for a minute, right? Sit with that one for a minute. Where do you see motivation being blamed for what structure could solve? We talked about and gave a lot of examples this evening. Please do. Look, I'm going to put that in a comment and pin it. So please do let me know. I would love to hear from you. But as the school year wraps up, y'all, many students, families, and educators, they aren't just checking out, they're experiencing fatigue due to like a lack of system failure. Imagine that. I know that sounds very sciencey, but yeah, it's a lack of system failure. Not a lack of, it's due to system failure, right? It's due to a lack of system or system failure. So again, y'all, thank y'all so much for listening. Because again, at Holistic Fluency, we want to make sure that we are locked in. We're super focused on math connection, math identity, right, and accuracy, because we want to make sure that our students don't just perform when it's time to perform, but that they persist, that these are just the life skills, right? All the background things that become the loud things, the louder things, the older they get. So thank you so, so much for listening, and I'll see y'all next week.